Hey there, welcome back to the James Show. News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Now, I didn't see this, but Troy tweeted in or X'd in, or what do you call it now? Because X can't be, can you make that a verb? Anyway, Troy X'd in. He said, just for grins, Kamala Harris told a group of band kids she was in the band. Westmont High School, where she graduated from in Montreal, did not have a marching band, and there's no evidence of her being in a band. Let's not be nitpicky. Look, if she wants to lie about a clarinet or whatever in high school, I'm not worried about that as much as I'm worried about the socialism, the price controls, the gun control, the censorship, the everything else that she spelled out. And did you hear yesterday's show where we went through the what is and is not fascism from someone who actually lived under fascism? I mean, it might be a legit concern. If you can find me the soundbite, I might play it and we can all get a good giggle at it. But, tonight, something big might happen. Now, probably not. It's probably not going to be a game changer or anything we remember 2 months from now. But if something boo-boos and CNN doesn't patch it up before it goes on air, this could be a significant interview. This could have some consequence. I mean, if they took it serious and they asked real questions and they didn't edit it for her favor and they didn't let her lean on her safe nets, this could be. But here's how was presented by CNN a couple days ago, because they're probably recording it about right now and they're going to play it tonight.
This is CNN breaking news.
But first, to some other breaking news in the presidential race. We are learning that CNN will hold an exclusive interview with Kamala Harris, her first since becoming the Democratic presidential nominee. Her running mate, Tim Walz, will join as well for this first interview. This is also their first interview together as the Democratic ticket. Let's bring in our CNN political director, David Chalian. So, David, what are we learning?
Yeah, I mean, we have been waiting to see this next sort of important hurdle for Kamala Harris and her campaign to jump, which is after a very successful 6 weeks here since she became the Democratic nominee, coalesced the party behind her.
Very successful, by the way. She hasn't done one interview, one press conference, hadn't answered a question. It just gets deemed successful because we said enough good things that the polls went up in her favor. She didn't do anything. All she had to do was hide. We did all the work, though. Successful.
Raised a ton of money, injected enthusiasm, got a running mate, pulled off a convention. All of that, though, Alex, very scripted.
Anyone ever not got a running mate or pulled off on a convention? Is that really an accomplishment, or is that the standard operating procedure of every election cycle?
Now, a couple other things coming up. They said they were going to schedule an interview, a sit-down interview, an extensive interview before the end of the month. That now is happening on CNN with our colleague Dana Bash, our anchor and chief political correspondent, down in Georgia. Harris and Walz are going on this bus tour starting tomorrow in Georgia. The interview will take place on Thursday. It will air as a primetime special at 9 p.m. Eastern here on CNN on Thursday. And as you noted, it is, of course, the first joint interview that the Democratic nominee and the vice presidential nominee are doing together. But it's also her first interview, the vice president, as the Democratic candidate. This is the first time she's going to take questions in a concerted effort like this, in an interview format, since Joe Biden 6 weeks ago upended this entire race by making that historic decision to bow out of his campaign, endorse his vice president, Kamala Harris, and that sent her on to these last 6 weeks here. And there are a lot of questions that have been lingering out there for her to answer as we go into this fall campaign.
Good Lord, the hacks just spin regular stories so hard. Yes, the historic decision to drop out of the race, not the controversial decision, not the questionable decision, not any kind of adjective that could be construed as negative. No, it's a historic decision. Now, Trump was actually asked about it yesterday. He had some comments that sound like a lot of what I've heard from you. I've heard from people that were calling in yesterday. I heard from people who send me messages on Facebook and whatnot. You know, there's some obvious holes in this setup here that I don't think we're going to get the most transparent look at a candidate through this CNN interview tonight.
First thing I want to do is say, why isn't it live? It's not a live interview. Right. It's an interview that's going to be taped and then edited and then put out. So that's not even an interview. Then she's doing it with her vice president sitting there. So she's not very smart. When they ask her a question that she can't answer, she'll just look at him. You answer it. I can't imagine. Everyone's waiting for her to do an interview because she's been a very big failure on interviews before, as you know, a tremendous failure. And she brings in the vice president, who, by the way, isn't so good himself. He's been a disaster, this guy. He has been a disaster. His state is in a state of shock from his governorship. He's been a horrible governor. You look at employment numbers, you look at the people that are leaving, you look at all of the problems. Minneapolis is burned down. They never built it back. It was terrible. He's been a terrible governor. It was a crazy pick. But he's sitting with her to help her out. So this is not the kind of a person we need as president.
I mean, they might be a good president if they had good policies. I mean, we still don't know, but this sure does look shady. What's the problem with having a sit-down interview? What's the problem with doing it live and not being able to edit it? What's the wrong with doing it without a whoopee, without a security blanket next to you? Tim Walz. Is she going to get the questions in advance? I've heard that rumor, but I don't know. CNN's probably not going to readily admit it. And then after he said that yesterday, this morning, Donald Trump put on Truth Social, look, this is what I'm saying. You got to work the refs here, right? So Trump says, Dana Bash of CNN has a chance at greatness today. If she gave a fair but tough interview of comrade Kamala Harris, she will expose her as being totally inept and ill-suited for the job of president, much as I exposed crooked Joe Biden during our now famous debate. How cool would that be for Dana and CNN? Also, the interview should not have Tampon Tim present to help with the inevitable Kamala stumbles. And under no circumstances should the transcript be allowed to be changed in any way, shape, or form. Dana and Jake were fair but firm at my CNN debate with Crooked Joe. This is a chance for Dana Bash to reach real stardom while at the same time doing a great service to our now failing country. Good luck, Dana. Do the right thing. DJT. Did he listen to the show yesterday and take my advice? Because that's what I was saying. You don't need to be beating up Jake Tapper and Dana Bash. You don't need to be beating up the moderators. When you go to your kid's football game tomorrow, don't be yelling at the refs and getting the refs all mad at you. There you go. Little strategery from Trump. Is he growing up? Is he finally maturing? I know it only took 78 years. But I think that guy has a much better chance of winning than the bombastic insult thrower. So I hope you can keep that up. Coming up next, Terry Schilling, president of the American Principles Project. We're going to preview the interview and the debate. And if you have any questions, anything you want to add, feel free to jump right on in. 800-288-9227. 800-288-9227. It's The James Show. News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Hey there, all you beautiful Texans. Welcome back to The James Show. It's News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Let's go. Hey, tonight there's something to get excited about. This interview that is probably being recorded about right now at CNN. They're going to edit it down and play it in the prime time tonight. Look, I don't think CNN is going to trip her up. But Terry Schilling, my next guest here from the American Principles Project, I think she might have the ability to trip herself up even in such a nerf-friendly setting as CNN.
Well, thanks so much for having me, James. I think you're exactly right. I think it'll be very interesting. I think there'll be a lot of eyeballs. She has put off all other interviews. This is the first one that she's done since becoming the nominee, which is quite embarrassing. I mean, this is the most important office, not just in America, but probably in the entire world. It impacts everything. And the fact that she's been hiding for the past, 30, 40 days is absolutely embarrassing. And I think that ultimately she's a vapid candidate. She doesn't know what she's talking about, and that's why they're going to have Tim Walz right next to her for her first and only interview as the presidential nominee. Do
you think this will be her only one?
I don't have any hope or optimism that she'll do more interviews after this. What we've seen from the press is they've been doing her job for her, right? Newsbusters, Brent Bozell and his team at MRC, they came out with some research just last week that showed that she's gotten 84% positive coverage in the legacy media, and Trump's gotten 89% negative coverage. Why would you change anything? Why would you actually do any interviews any more than you have to when you're already getting all the type of press coverage you'd like? Yeah, and
her favorables are up more than 10%. In fact, there used to be a 15% spread between favorable and unfavorable. It's down to 1.5%. So going dark and hiding from the media has been working really well for her, Terry.
Well, it got her on the cover of Time magazine and a very flattering, cover story. What's happened is very interesting. You have all these sycophant journalists that are trying to get the next big interview from her that are now kissing tail. And they've been writing all these puff pieces, putting her on the cover of Time, even though she's had a horrendous track record as vice president, she had a horrendous track record as senator, and an even worse record as attorney general. But these guys are all kissing tail with the hopes of getting that interview.
I like the strategic use of the word tail there, Terry. I appreciate that. I think the real test, she'll probably skate through this, no problem. The real test for her is going to be the debates. Could that trip her up?
I think the debates offer President Trump a major opportunity to go on offense and expose her as the vapid nominee that she is. It's an amazing opportunity, and he'll have the ability to contrast his record as president with her last 4 years as vice president.
Interesting stuff. Do you think there will be a second debate?
It depends on how well this debate goes for her, right? If it goes very well, she probably won't want to do any more debates. If it goes poorly for her, she might be forced into having subsequent debates going further to try and repair the damage that gets done here.
So this CNN interview that's happening tonight, I'm trying to find, and I can't find, whether or not she's getting these questions in advance. Do you have any info on that?
Look, I think we have to just kind of assume that the legacy media is in the tank for her. And I don't say that lightly or unfairly. In the 2016 debate between Trump and Hillary Clinton, the moderators, Donna Brazile gave the debate questions to the Hillary Clinton
campaign. All right, hang on. Correction. That was a town hall with Hillary and Bernie. They were screwing over Bernie voters when Donna Brazile gave her the questions.
I might have mixed that up. I'm sorry about that. But, they rig the game. These are not fair players. They don't call balls and strikes. They have a candidate that they're rooting for. So I think we have to assume that this is going to be a very softball interview.
Yeah, I think that's even more profound because for behest of the elites, they'll even screw over Democrat voters.
Well, that's exactly what we saw over the last 6 months, right? It was no surprise to anyone actually paying attention to the news that Joe Biden's mental health had become that badly impaired. And they covered it up. They kept them from having an open primary because they were worried about who would come out on top of that. And they wanted to button everything up and control the whole process. And in doing so, they disenfranchised millions and millions of Democratic voters who should have had a say in who their nominee was.
All right. What's going on with you outside of WPAP these days? What's going on in the American Principles Project, Terry?
Well, we've got a lot of things in the work. We just launched our campaign ads in our top 3 states, Wisconsin, Georgia, and Pennsylvania. We're attacking Kamala Harris and Tim Walz for their record in the military, waging a woke culture war against our men and women that led to a disastrous pullout in Afghanistan. We're launching a documentary on this, actually, with 5 Gold Star families. President Trump is in this. You can check out the information at culturewardoc.com and see the trailer. We're launching it on September 3rd on X and also on Real America's Voice.
Oh, you should come on my show that day and promote it.
That sounds great. I'd love to.
All right. Well, we'll talk to you, I guess that's next week, September 3rd. Terry Schilling, American Principles Project on The James Show again. 800-288-9227, 800-288-9227. Coming up next, I did a segment yesterday on the principles of fascism, and I was playing audio from that Austrian immigrant, the refugee who lived under the Nazis, and I got a little feedback on that, and I will answer it coming up next. It's The James Show, News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Hey there, welcome back to The James Show, News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. My next guest, Harrison Fields from the Heritage Foundation. Welcome to The James Show. So the Heritage Foundation has launched a big effort here to expose the Biden administration for its extreme liberal tactics. I saw this online, and I wanted to ask you, what does that mean, Harrison?
Well, thank you so much for having me on. So it's an effort to really expose the vice president's record because we're seeing a lot of misconstruing of her record now or just denial of what we've actually had to endure as a nation with her under as vice president. So all it does is essentially lays out exactly what she's done in nearly 4 years when it comes to the border, when it comes to the economy, when it comes to all the other issues that she's had to preside over as number 2 in command. And it gives the American people and persuadable voters across this country who are interested in just facts. This isn't actually a political website by any means. It's through our C3 arm, so it can't be political. It's strictly facts, and it allows the American people to go to dangerouslyliberal.com and read it for themselves. But, the funny thing about it is that the American people really don't need to read a website to tell you exactly what has happened under the Biden-Harris administration to know exactly that it's not wrong, that it's not right. Something isn't right about what's been going on. But for future reference, dangerouslyliberal.com will give you everything you need to know about Vice President Harris's record as vice president.
Yeah, I didn't even know this website existed. So you go through and just hear some key stats. Inflation is up 20% since 2021. 10.3 million known alien, what's it called? Illegal immigration. $10,000 plus is what the household has lost due to inflation and higher energy costs since Biden-Harris took office. Now, the skeptical me says, look, she's just vice president. She didn't really have much power anyway. How much can you blame her for this stuff?
Right. Well, that's what they want you to believe, right? It's funny to me that this is the first vice president in history that doesn't really want to be tethered to the actions of the administration in which she's been a part of. From day one, they've consistently said it. It was them, not us. I mean, usually every administration, we say Trump administration, the Obama administration. They made it very clear that they wanted it to be known as the Biden-Harris administration. So for almost 4 years, that's what we've all been kind of programmed to say. So now that she's deciding to throw her hat into the ring of presidential politics, she wants to back away from that. But the reality is, when you are, and as she said it herself, the last person in the room on every major decision with the president and Joe Biden, you do own every single thing this administration does. And it's news to me you have a vice president that actually wants to back away from the work of their boss. If you look at Biden, he owned the Obama administration. If you look at Pence, up until the last couple of weeks, he owned every action of the Trump administration. Bush did the same thing for Reagan, and the list goes on. Gore did the same for Clinton. So you have to acknowledge the fact that if you are the vice president of the United States, whatever happens under your administration does come back to you, and you can't really hide behind your boss, especially when your boss isn't running for re-election, and now the blame truly does sit on the lap of the vice president.
Yeah, well, a couple other good points you guys are making on this website is, her record before she was VP. It shows that she's opposed border security her entire career, including some key votes when the brief time she was in the Senate. She's been pushing transgenderism for 20 years. So some of this even predates her time in the White House.
Right, exactly that. And, that's the other thing about it. It's like she came to the White House with a record of what I wouldn't call really accomplishments, but just an overall record that we could point to. And a lot of it has been dangerously liberal, which is one of the reasons why we named the website that. And, if you look at her record as a prosecutor, if you look at her record as a U.S. senator, she co-sponsored the Medicare for All bill with Senator Bernie Sanders. So she has over a decade worth of actual work where the American people can turn to say, what exactly is your worldview? What would you do if you actually have the power to hold the highest office in the land? And we have a litany of work for us to point to give the American people a gauge of how radical she would be. And unfortunately for the American people, if she is to be elected and to become president of the United States, she will be the most progressive, the most radical elected official to hold the office of president in the history of our country.
Okay, but look, I think I found some flaws here, Harrison Fields, in your website, dangerouslyliberal.com. You talk about the economy, you talk about the border, you talk about inflation, you talk about transgenderism, energy, crime, healthcare, but there's nothing in here about mean tweets, and that's what's really important.
You're right.
All right, Harrison Fields, y'all done some good work here. Dangerouslyliberal.com. I encourage the people listening to go check it out, maybe even share it. So thanks for being on the show today, Harrison. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. You have a great day.
You too. There he is, Harrison Fields from the Heritage Foundation. All right, coming up next, super important segment. So I want you to be here in 5 minutes. When I do it, I have to say I'm sorry to McKinney ISD. I got a story wrong. Now, it wasn't my fault, but when I get it wrong, I get it wrong. I'm going to issue a correction. It's going to be a big, fat, long correction. And if you're not used to those, that's because the rest of the media is corrupt, and they should be doing stuff like this from time to time. So a little contrition on my part coming up on The James Show. News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Hey there, all you beautiful Texans. Welcome back to The James Show. It's News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Let's go. I love seeing you argue with people on Facebook, on the posts that we put up on WBAP, the Facebook page, or sometimes Instagram or whatever, wherever it's at. Dude, those are so funny. You people are so savage in a good way. I mean, and the people that you're savaging usually deserve it. And you're really not overly mean. It's not like, because you can look at these people profile pictures. I'm like, oh no, there better not be any fat jokes here. And y'all are usually pretty disciplined about it. You stick to the issues, and you don't make fun of people for looking like the bar scene from Star Wars or anything. You guys do a really good job with that. And, you might think you're just kind of shouting into the void, or, shouting into space or whatever. But when someone pops off and 28 other people go to correct them, that has some effect. You guys, your little crusades, they don't mean nothing out there. I really appreciate all the comments. All right, my next guest. Welcome back to The James Show from Young Voices. It's Donald Kimball again. Donald, let's talk about this interview that's coming up. I'm still trying to find confirmation, because I heard the rumor and I saw it reported, but I never saw a sourcing on this. Did she get the questions in advance or not, Donald?
I don't know that I've officially seen something that I could definitely say one way or the other. It would not surprise me, though. It's not like that kind of thing is unprecedented, as we well know that the leaks showed from the DNC and Hillary Clinton back in 2016. During the debates, I believe they'd given her those questions. So something like that would not be out of the ordinary. It would not be surprising. I can't 100% say it's going to happen, but I think that regardless, I don't think anyone will be surprised when the questions will be softball, because the entire campaign strategy to this point has been avoid getting her speaking ad hoc, avoid getting people to see her at her truest when she's not reading off a teleprompter. And so any chance they can get to sort of waylay the concerns of avoiding the media will have to be balanced with making sure that she has some sort of a script or some sort of prepared answers.
Well, I've lost a little bit of hope here. Dana Bash did a pretty good job with the presidential debate, hiding her left-leaning proclivities. She nice and professional job there. But CNN the last few days has really turned on the afterburners about rewriting some of this record. Carolyn Levitt was on yesterday, and the guy that she was talking to 3 times tried to correct her and say, well, she was never the border czar. So, I mean, what do you say to that, Donald?
Well, I think your concerns are well founded. I believe that Bash herself has tried to go back and correct the record about, was she ever really the border czar? It's one of those things where they're trying to control the language. A great phrase that I will attribute to Michael Malice is that the media is often factual but not truthful. And so they will say things like, she was never officially appointed border czar, and maybe there was no official position that she signed that gave her that title. But in effect, it was reported that she was the czar. In effect, she was put in charge of that. So in all meaningful ways, she was the border czar. And so it was factually true that she may never have had the title border czar. It is not truthful because that was by de facto what she was appointed. So that seems to me the position that CNN will try to take. It's kind of how they operate a lot of their quote unquote fact checks. And so I would be skeptical of this being a hard-hitting interview, pushing her on the right questions.
So if Tim Walz talks too much, do you think that'll be a criticism that might wake some people up? Like, hang on a second, I don't want to hear from this goober. I want to hear from Kamala. Or are they already so far sold down the river, it doesn't matter what she does?
I think that the fact that they're bringing Tim Walz in means that they have a strategy. I think they will have anticipated that. And I think they will use him, and he will jump in strategically. So I don't think that will be a problem. If this was something where they had arranged this last minute and, they for some reason they had to give her 12 hours notice for this interview and they threw in Walz at the last minute, I think that would be a very reasonable thing. I think, however, what's going to end up happening is she's going to have some pre-scripted answers. She's going to take the lead on the very obvious questions, assuming she doesn't already have them. And then when there's something that is a little bit more spontaneous, when there's something that's a little bit more hard pressing, Walz will start. He'll give the lead and then give her time to collect an answer and think, perhaps. That would be my guess. But I also think that people don't know Walz. And so the fact that this gives him publicity will be interesting for people. So even if he does lean on the side of talking too much, I think that it plays in their favor just because it's a new person. And that's interesting. Whether you like him or not, it is interesting to see someone new have such a high profile.
How long is this supposed to last, Donald? Do we know?
I don't know off the top of my head. I think it was anywhere from the half hour to hour, but I could be mistaken there. I didn't have the details in front of me there. But again, I think that if it's going to be a longer form interview, I think that probably the odds that she asked the questions ahead of time are more likely. But again, no official confirmation on that. Just a hunch. Dude,
if she does less than half an hour, she should just get laughed out of the room. But I know she won't. I think about that. When this criticism first popped up, you never answered any questions. So she's like, sure, I'll sit down with the interview. And she sat down with an interview with Tim Walz. And it was 10 minutes. And the first 2 minutes were them just goofing around like, yeah, I'll make white guy tacos and dumps. Like they didn't get to anything of substance over the 10 minutes. Are they going to be able to just sort of skate around and filibuster and not really get to any substance in this one?
It's hard to say. It depends on how hard Bash pushes. I think that it won't be quite the same level as that prior video, which we talked about last time and just was absolutely ridiculous. But it would, she's going to try not to commit as much as possible, because I do think, and I've said this from the beginning, that her strategy is to ride that new candidate high that we generally see in primary elections, where people aren't as familiar with you. They don't know your policy stances super strongly. They're just going more on vibes. And so you always see a very high popular start and then it declines. They're trying to ride that high popular start and try to last until the election, since it is such a short time.
Yeah, I totally agree with all that. The one thing that I keep hearing that I don't agree with from a lot of pundits on the right side of the aisle here is that you don't hear a whole lot of Kamala because she doesn't have any policy positions. She just blows with the wind or says whatever's popular. No, I think she has policy positions. She just knows that politically speaking, they're unpopular. Having a Marxist dad, and she saw how well the price controls thing worked. I think she's keeping her mouth shut as a strategy, not because her brain is empty.
Well, I think that's right. I just saw a report that ostensibly she herself confirmed that she has changed positions on things like fracking or the border or some of her earlier positions on intervention in the Middle East. And so I think that she doesn't have strong convictions that she's willing to stick to maybe publicly, but I agree that she does hold. I think, her hard left positions from before are a better glimpse into what she actually believes than what she says now. But I just don't think she has the conviction of character to hold to them.
Agreed. Donald Kimball, where do they find you outside of WBAP?
KimballDonald.com or Kimball Donald on X. Thanks so much.
All right, coming up next, new information on the Trump shooter. You'd think this would be the top headline of the day if we were living in a sane world, but you'll get updated yourself coming up in about 5 minutes on the James Show. News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3.